All right. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for signing in to join the October 2023 Observer Information Session with the Snohomish County Elections Division. I am Duncan Clausen. I'm the Elections and Voter Outreach Specialist. And with me today is Matthew Pangburn, the Elections Manager. So we're going to do our best to share presenting duties with you all today. I'm going to show you my face here while we're doing introductions, and then I'm going to turn that off so I'm not a distraction here at all. But thank you very much for joining us. First up, just a couple of housekeeping items. This is a webinar, so all the participants are muted, video is off, and we just ask that you use the Q&A feature to ask any questions. Depending on who's presenting, either myself or Matthew, the other of us, will be keeping an eye on the Q&A there. The second part is the observer roster. So by registering today and attending this information session, we put your name on a roster. So if by some chance we needed to limit the number of observers that are in the space because of capacity issues, those who attended either this information session or the one in July will be given priority. I will say, though, I've yet to have an election that I've been a part of where we've hit capacity and needed to ask folks to leave. So I don't think that'll be too much of an issue today. But with that, I have some polls in here. So I'm going to launch this one here. Hopefully you all see it. If you're able to just take a moment, let me know, have you observed the elections process in the past?
And while we're waiting for results, if you some of the polls, you can move the window for the poll because it will be obstructing some of the slides.
Yes, thank you for that, Matthew. All right. So look at there. All right, we're almost 50-50. We got about just a little more than half that have not observed the elections process. So there'll be a lot of good information for you all here. And even those of you that have observed the elections process in the past, depending on if it was very recently or not so recently, we have a lot of good information. We have some nice photos to kind of show you what our space looks like. And cover some of the changes that have happened in our process the last few years. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the result. There we go. So that's that. I'll stop that one. We'll close out of that. And with that, I'm going to stop my video and we'll just focus on the presentation here. So our agenda today, we'll do a little introduction. We'll talk about the mission of the Snohomish County Elections Division. We'll go through some county facts, our observer rules, the various election activities, kind of when those activities start and when they end, and how you can come in and observe and kind of give you some tips and tricks for making sure that you can make the most out of your visit to us to observe the activities here in our office. All right, so to begin, our mission is to conduct fair, accountable elections and encourage people to understand and participate in the voting process. So that's how we approach what we do here. We talk about fair, what we're really thinking about here is accurate elections that are impartial and accessible to all eligible voters that want to participate in our elections process. When we say accountable, we mean secure, transparent, and efficient processes as well. So we are accountable in our process. About elections here in Snohomish County, we have a population of just about 840,000 people. That is an estimate from July of 2022 with the most recent census. But as you know, people don't stay in the same spot forever. So that's the last kind of whole number we have there. In terms of registered voters, we have 511,000, give or take. These numbers are pulled as of June 2023. But we have just over 500,000 registered voters here in Snohomish County. We have 12 full-time employees in our elections division, and depending on the election type and size and the expected participation from voters, we will hire 90 or more seasonals in any given election. And we have about 119 different districts in our county. That includes cities, towns, school districts, fire districts, park and recreation districts, all sorts of different kinds of districts throughout the county, but does not include our precinct committee officers. There's many, many of those. Looking at our registered voters and county population. So again, our total population, just about 840,000. The voting age population, so that's just anybody over the age of 18 in Snohomish County, is just about 650,000. But we've got to drill down a little bit further when we look at the citizen voting age population. That's everybody that's over the age of 18 that is able to participate in elections here in Snohomish County. We have about 583,000 people that are eligible. And again, that voter registration number, just over 500,000 registered voters. So we're doing really good in Snohomish County in terms of registering voters and giving them the opportunity to participate. But we do have a little bit of room to improve. So you all being here, I imagine you're active in the community and excited about, participating in our civic processes here. So feel free to please encourage your friends, neighbors, family to make sure that they're registered and participating in our elections. I will say, looking at that voter registration rate, we're doing very well compared to the rest of the country. Nationally, about 69, just over 69% of the citizen voting age population is registered. So we're doing great here. Part of that success is because we make it easy to register to vote, but we also do a lot of work to maintain that voter registration database. So you can register while getting your driver's license at the Department of Licensing. We also view obituaries, read through those in the paper to make sure we're removing voters who are deceased. We look and partner with the United States Postal Service for their change of address information. Roughly 20% of registered voters could move each year. They're not necessarily moving in or out of the county, though they could be, but just moving around the county as well. The vast majority of new voter registrations and those voter registration updates do come through the Department of Licensing. And then finally, there is ERIC. ERIC is the Electronic Registration Information Center. So this is a quote from Secretary of State Steve Hobbs. I'll just read it for folks that are interested in that. So ERIC is a stronger system with every state that joins its shared database. Every departure from this partnership sets back our progress to improve elections integrity across America. Voters and elected officials nationwide must set aside partisanship and support this vital effort. So we won't go into too much detail on ERIC, but what I will say is it was created by 7 states and is controlled by its member states rather. Member states securely submit voter registration and motor vehicle department data to ERIC, and ERIC is also certified to use official death data from the Social Security Administration and subscribes to the change of address data from the U.S. Postal Service. So using all of these sources, ERIC really provides its members with reports that identify inaccurate or out-of-date voter registration records, deceased voters, individuals who appear to be eligible to vote but are not yet registered, and help us identify possible cases of illegal voting. There has been some national partisan commentary about ERIC. However, we feel that ERIC is a vital tool to support accurate voter rolls and to identify illegal voting. The more states that participate, the better all of our data is. All right, so here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about election turnout before we dive into some more of our presentation. And with that, I have another poll. Hopefully you find these fun and entertaining. Try and break up the monotony of a webinar. So hopefully you're all seeing this here. Poll 2, guess the expected turnout percent for the 2023 general election. All right, we have almost everyone participating. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the result. Hopefully you can all see this. Seeing a little more than half are looking at 28% for this election. I'll let Matthew jump in and correct me, but I believe we're looking at 40% for this local
I upped
election
it to
here.
about 45, but yeah, it's about
Up to about
40%.
45. Okay. And so really we're pulling that information together from past turnout for similar election types. And so we're in that 45%. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that poll. We'll keep moving forward here. So here we go. This is just a small table with a few selections of our election turnout in the past. You can see at the top line or the top row there, the local odd year elections. That's what we're doing this year. Last year was a midterm, right? That was an even year election, but it was non-presidential. And then next year is the big show, if you will, our presidential election, where our turnout is from a low of about 75% to a high so far of 87%. And then again, just highlight, that's what we're looking at for this year. So why we're all here today, our observer program. Election observers play a critical role in ensuring that the voting and elections process is conducted fairly and transparently, promoting trust in the democratic process. Observers may notify our team, may notify our team of deviations from standard operating procedures or electoral laws, enhancing accountability in the electoral process. However, election observers must refrain from interfering in voting or the electoral process to avoid disruptions or biases. All election observers must conduct themselves in accordance with the law and the highest ethical standards to promote the integrity of the electoral process and help fulfill our mission statement. All right, so with all of that, we're going to jump into the rules. We're going to spend a little bit of time going through these. There are several rules, but they are easy to follow and common sense. So first up, you'll check in and wear a badge. When you arrive, we have a check-in station and badges available for all observers and visitors. If you are observing at a drop box or accessible voting site, please let the staff know and they can provide you with a QR code to check in. It's a pretty easy process there. Next up, we ask that you observe, don't disturb. So observers may not disrupt or interfere with the elections process. Examples of interference might include obstructing the path of voters or staff, engaging in conversations with voters or staff, electioneering by wearing campaign items while you're observing. And this includes if you visit and observe at one of our Dropbox locations. Do not electioneer or engage with voters or impede their access to the Dropbox. You're really just there to watch and not participate. Yeah. In addition, we do have designated staff. So while we ask you not to disrupt our staff or voters, we do have designated staff at our accessible voting sites, here at the auditor's office, in our processing areas. So when you arrive, you will be introduced to the area leads. Many of the people working here are seasonal employees, and they're just not trained to answer the questions, and we need them to stay focused on the task that they're assigned. They kind of have just one thing that's what they're working on all day. And so to avoid disrupting the work of temporary election members, we ask that you address any questions to the designated employees only. Real quick here, so that's going to be Garth Fell, the county auditor, the chief deputy auditor, Connie Barnt, Matthew Pangburn, the elections manager, who's with us today, or Wendy Mouch, who's our elections supervisor. And in addition, there may be area leads that we will introduce you to when you arrive. No touchings. We just ask that you do not touch employees, envelopes, ballots, machinery, equipment, supplies, or anything else. Again, pretty straightforward there. And we also ask that you stay in the designated areas. So designated areas do allow observers to observe all of the election processes while also providing staff the space they need to be able to work comfortably. To ensure our security, we have a strict policy prohibiting the use of any device or technology for photography, filming, or audio recording during observation or public office tours. Again, pretty simple, self-explanatory here. No food or drink. We just don't want any spills or accidents that could damage ballots or equipment. That said, we do allow a closed lid water bottle as long as you're keeping it away from the work areas. And then we just ask that you be quiet. We need our employees to stay focused on the tasks they are assigned. So we ask that you please keep your conversations to a minimum. And if you have to have a conversation, you can step outside the office to do that, take a phone call, what have you. And again, if you do have questions, don't hesitate to ask them to our designated staff. We want to make sure that your questions are answered and that our staff can work efficiently. While the COVID emergency and mandates have ended, we do still ask observers to stay home if you're sick. We really appreciate that. We had a lot of work to get through, and we can't, we want to avoid our staff getting sick as much as we can. Finally, on the rules here, we do have the auditor does have the authority to limit observers at any time. And again, as we mentioned at the top here, that your attendance gives you priority should we need to limit the number of observers in our space. But if any observer or visitor cannot follow the rules, they can be directed out of the facility as well. So we ask that you respect our rules here. All right, we're about to jump into all of our elections processes. So before we do that, just gonna have a quick conversation about some terms, concepts, and practices we adhere to in our process. All right, so important dates, just real quick here. So military and overseas ballots were mailed out last month. All the rest of our ballots get mailed out here October 19th. That's this Thursday. October 30th begins our 8-day in-person voter registration period. November 7th is election day, and November 28th is when the election will be certified. All right, so Matthew, you are up next here, going to talk a little bit about security.
Yes, sir. So election security means taking steps to minimize potential threats, vulnerabilities, and uncertainties that could undermine the integrity, fairness, and credibility of the electoral process. It includes being proactive and putting in place protective measures to identify and address risks so that the election can run smoothly. These measures include restricting access. Dual employee badge entry is required in ballot storage and tabulation areas. And we utilize walls, fences, and gates to prevent unauthorized entry and to separate our processes. All right, next slide. So we also use security cameras. Security cameras monitor election activities. They also act as a deterrent and provide recorded visual evidence in case of incidences or disputes. All right. All of our ballot tabulation equipment is air-gapped and has never been connected to the internet. It does not also have Bluetooth capability. We use secure USB drives to move the programming files and election results between the air-gapped tabulation system and our county's secure network. So when we program the election, we were programming it on a separate computer, not connected to the internet. We then load it on a USB stick, transfer that to scan it for any potential malware, adware, or any of that stuff, load it onto the network, the secure tabulation system. And on election night and the days after, when we when we post results, we will use a new secure USB stick, download the results, and then post them to our website. So that the air gap is always maintained on our secure system. Next slide. And when handling live ballots, all staff will utilize red pens. So seasonal staff, specialists, whenever we are handling live ballots or any of the paperwork associated with the ballots, we will be using red pens or a single color pen. For the March presidential primary, it may be green. This mitigates the election staff from doctoring any ballots.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. So one thing we is I chuckle a little bit because even though we all work here in elections administration, just want to touch on ballot versus ballot return envelope. Oftentimes they get used interchangeably, like, did you sign your ballot? That signature really is going to be on your ballot return envelope, not on the ballot itself. I just want to clarify that your ballot cannot be tracked to you as an individual, but your ballot return envelope has your signature, has a barcode that is connected to you. And once those two pieces are separated in our ballot processing area, there's no way to pull out an individual ballot and know who voted that ballot. In fact, there's laws that actually allow us to consolidate vote totals in precincts where so few ballots were returned that you could possibly work out how a given individual voted. So just something there on our security and process. We have various ballot statuses. So as we walk through the path of a ballot in the following slides, you'll hear some of these ballot status names. And these are what we use to note the various status of ballot return envelope can have. Any registered voter can access their ballot status at votewa.gov. So you can see the URL at the bottom of the screen there. You can go there, sign in with your name and date of birth, and then you can check your ballot status. Again, I'll just say them out loud. So status 1 is sent. That means your ballot has been mailed to you. Received means your ballot has been received at the Snohomish County Elections Division and been scanned in through our inbound scanner. Accepted means that we have gone through the signature verification process, and the signature on your ballot return envelope has matched the signature on your voter registration record, and then that ballot envelope is ready to move on for opening, extraction, scanning, and tabulation. The final status challenged means a couple of different things. One, it could mean that you forgot to sign your ballot return envelope, so there's no signature on there. The other one is if we cannot verify the signature on the ballot return envelope matches the signature on your voter registration record, that could be a reason why your signature is challenged. Now, that said, if your signature is challenged or you forget to sign, you do have an opportunity as a voter to correct that signature. We call that curing your signature. So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well, I believe. But real quick, I want to go to this slide so I can sit here for just a moment. Just recently, our voter registration database released the ability to send text messages of your ballot status. So again, you can always go onto VoteWa and sign in and check your ballot status. But if you're really curious or you're interested in being notified that everything is good with your envelope, or you want to know if there was ever an issue with your signature, you can scan the QR code here with your phone, fill out the information on the form there, and we will make sure that we add you to that text notification list for your ballot status. Also on the form, if you include your email, we will add your email to your voter registration record. And then there's an option in that form. You can say yes or no if you want to be added to our newsletter. We don't send out a ton of updates. We're not really going to spam your inbox with that newsletter, but we do have key dates, important election information. One reason, again, you all being so engaged here that you might be interested in our newsletter is if a jurisdiction is looking for a pro-con committee member for a bond or levy or something like that, and they're unable to find one, we will send out notifications asking for people to join pro-con committees through that newsletter at times. All right, I'm seeing some questions coming through. It looks like Matthew is typing out answers, but Matthew, feel free to jump in and interrupt if there's anything there we want to address out loud right now. I'm looking at one, and I think there's opportunity to address that later. So
I was going to actually say that. So, but yes, I was
okay,
writing to this individual that will be addressing this later.
perfect. All right, so love this photo. Look at all the colorful trays we have. So we're going to talk a lot about batches. You can think of each of these mail trays that you're seeing in the image as a batch. Trays are often colored to correspond with which point in the process those ballot envelopes are in. And trays may also have labels on them if there's a need, because there's so many different statuses a ballot return envelope could be in. And the tray colors will be described as we move through each step of our process here. So here we go, observation, opportunities, and locations. This is where we live. This is our front door here, 3000 Rockefeller Avenue. We are on the first floor of the Admin West building. So when you come to 3000 Rockefeller, that's the whole county campus. The way I like to describe it is we're the middle of the three buildings. If you go too far to the west, you'll go to the courthouse. Go too far to the east is where you pay your property taxes. So we're right in the middle there. Once you walk in that building, there's two doors, human resources and us. So we're pretty easy to find once you come into the first floor of Admin West. This is what our door looks like here. We have a sign up above letting you know you're in the right spot. And then here is our lobby. So right inside those doors we were just looking at, you'll see our customer service counter. And we'll scoot down this way. This is our new check-in kiosk. So that's right by the half door. It's where we ask you to check in. We'll get you your name tag for while you're in our space observing. And we have folks there to help you if you're running into any issues. So the elections basement. This is the Admin West building basement. So there is a secure elevator in the elections office for accessing basement activities. If you want to view the postal delivery, you'll need to check in at the county loading dock on Oaks Avenue between 5 and 5:30 in the morning on weekdays. So we get our postal ballot delivery very early in the morning. So that inbound team, this equipment you can see on this slide is our inbound sorter and scanner. It basically just scans the barcode, and that's what says that we have received your ballot return envelope before we do the signature verification. We also have our drop boxes throughout the county. So you're welcome to observe any of our 24/7 drop boxes. These are unstaffed with the exception of election night. So on election night, we do have staff or seasonal employees at every location for a few hours before the drop boxes close. It's to help with traffic flow and then to close and lock the drop boxes promptly at 8 p.m. Again, we'll just say you're not allowed to impede or interfere or electioneer near the drop boxes. You cannot ask voters to inspect signatures or envelopes being dropped off. And also, just to be clear, voters are allowed to return ballots for others. They might have a friend, somebody who's sick, or family members, so they can drop off more than one. And that's not inappropriate or illegal. And voters who download a replacement ballot from votewad.gov will use regular household envelopes to return their ballot packet. So you can print off your own replacement from the web. It's not necessarily going to have the standard ballot return envelope, because there's a secrecy sleeve and a signature sheet that's inside with that packet that they've printed off. And then again, if there is staff on site that's closing that drop box, please feel free to let them know that you're there to observe, and they can check in. We're just trying to keep track of how many folks come and observe our processes at different locations. All right, so Dropbox closing. They are teams of 2. Every step is documented physically and digitally. So RCW 29A.40.170 states that the county auditor must prevent overflow of each ballot Dropbox to allow a voter to deposit his or her ballot securely. So ballots must be removed from a ballot Dropbox by at least 2 people, with a record kept of the date and time ballots were removed and the names of the people removing them. Ballots from Dropboxes must be returned to the counting center in secured transport containers, and a copy of the record must be placed in the container, and 1 copy must be transported with the ballots to the counting center, where the seal number must also be verified by the county auditor or a designated representative. And so I'll spare you the rest of the the verbiage there. But so you can see when the Dropbox is open, there's a seal inside to make sure that that seal was not broken. They take photos of it as well as document it on paper. Then the ballots are consolidated into a single blue tub if possible. If there's multiple tubs required, they will fill multiple tubs. And then those seals that you can see in the bottom right of that image, they seal the lid down nice and tight. There's one on either side of the bin, so those cannot be opened, and they're brought back to our processing area. Next up, you can also observe our accessible voting sites. So we have 4 of those available this election. Same rules apply at the Dropbox locations. And just a reminder, we do not have in-person voting in Washington State, like most of the country kind of thinks of in-person voting. So our accessible voting sites are locations where voters can come to register, they can get a new or replacement ballot, and they can return their ballot at the mobile Dropbox at those locations. So if you don't want to leave it at an unstaffed Dropbox, or you don't want to put it through the mail, you can bring it to our office here in Everett, or you can go to any of the accessible voting sites and drop it off there. There is election staff at those sites, and they bring those bins back every night before they go home. They'll bring any returned ballots.
And I do believe it is called Hotel Arlington now. I think they changed their name again.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, that's it's been impossible to keep up with that. All right, the logic and accuracy testing, Matthew, I'm going to hand it over to you for this section.
Sounds good. So a logic and accuracy test is performed before every primary, general, and special election. Think of this as a dress rehearsal for the election equipment. Test ballots with a predetermined outcome are marked and scanned to check the ability of the central count system to accurately tally results for all candidates, ballot measure responses, write-in votes, overvotes, and blank votes or blank ballots. Candidates, political parties, and the press and the public are notified of the date and time of the test and may attend to observe. After the test, all test ballots and reports are sealed in boxes for retention. Separately, a pre-election test to certify the logic and accuracy of the accessible voting unit is conducted. We conducted the accessible voting unit test this morning at 10 a.m., And the official logic and accuracy test for the November 7th general election is tomorrow, October 17th at 10 a.m. We encourage you all to come and watch. Next slide. So first, a matrix like the example shown here is created and tells us what the results should be once the marked ballots are scanned and tabulated on the equipment. This predetermined pattern is dictated by state law, and the test matrix has been approved by the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State will send representatives to observe the logic and accuracy test when Washington State offices and ballot questions are involved in the election. So we will have a representative tomorrow from the Secretary of State's office. A set of sample ballots are marked in a known pattern using the matrix, using a variety of writing instruments, pencils, pens, markers, etc. This makes sure that we can capture all intended votes. This set of ballots is referred to as the test deck. The test deck is then scanned and tallied by tabulation equipment. The results are then compared to the known results from the matrix. There must be an exact match. And answering Hannah's question, approximately the logic and accuracy test will probably take about an hour.
Excellent. I'm going to hit that as answer live. And then I see another question here. Are there minimum and maximum number of hours to volunteer at one time? So just want to clarify that question. So you're not volunteering with us, just to be clear. You are coming in as an observer, and you are welcome to be here to observe for as long as you'd like on any given day. There's no max or minimum for you to come in and observe our processes.
And if Deborah's asking about seasonal election employees, we do hire people. So the people that are in our office are seasonal employees. They file an application and are hired to do the duties which we assign.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, so inbound ballot sorting. Again, this happens in the basement of the Admin West building, and there is a secure elevator in the main elections area of the first floor of the Admin West building. Now, if you want to come in again for the mail arrival, give us a call in advance, and you'll end up going to the loading dock to be let in, because the rest of the county building is going to be closed. We're getting kind of an early start those days.
Please let us know the day beforehand if you plan on coming at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call at 5 a.m. that morning.
Yeah, the phones for the office don't work. You want to coordinate in advance for that one. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too at the end. We have a whole calendar of the observer opportunities. So I'll say more to that at that point. So step one here, we all of the ballot envelopes received from the drop boxes are removed from the bins, and they're arranged so they all face the same direction, and they're in like a clear mail tray at that point. So we saw all the colored ones. We have these clear ones. When they first come in, they get faced and sort and arranged so they can run through the system cleanly. And the ones that come from the post office, they're already arranged and ready to scan. So we don't have to do this whole arranging process. After after all the arranging, the ballot envelopes are loaded onto and run through this sorter and scanner. And this step triggers that received status in the voter's registration record for that voter's ballot return envelope. If a ballot has already been received for a voter, that is identified in this process, and any duplicate ballot return envelope is going to be sent into a different pocket, is what we call them. So if you're looking at this image here, you can see the very clear one in front is received or accepted. We run multiple passes. Again, we'll talk more about that, but you can see in the back, there's this like reject or pre-challenge. So if there were to be a duplicate, it would go into that separate pocket there. So this system captures a digital image of the signature area on the outside of the envelope for comparison to the signature on the voter's registration record. The equipment does not check the signature on the envelope to the signature in the voter registration database. Again, that's done by a human. Now it's done from a picture to a picture digitally on screen. Um, but that signature comparison is not done by a computer program or a machine, however you want to describe it here. And then you'll also notice that the received label on the pocket in this image is also going to be in a yellow tray. So yellow label, yellow tray. All the received ballots, once they've been scanned through, they're loaded into these yellow mail trays. And here they wait in a secure storage area while the signature checking team verifies the voter signatures from the digital images captured when those envelopes were initially scanned. So signature verification, this also happens on the first floor in Admin West. This is what it looks like. Um, so signature verification is done in our main elections area, and our seasonal signature verifiers work in tandem and must agree that a signature is a match before accepting the signature as valid. Any signature that is marked as challenged, that is, it does not match the signature on file, goes through a second review by our most experienced full-time staff signature verifiers. We also review the accepted signatures to ensure accuracy. Looking here, sorry, I saw a question pop up. Someone was asking, do the envelopes from the post office get postmarked with the date at the post office? And yes, the post office will postmark the ballot return envelopes. And then, yeah, that clarifying piece in Matthew's typed answer. If you're using one of the blue USPS mailboxes, definitely keep an eye out on the last pickup time. You know, if it's election day, so that's Tuesday, November 7th, and the last pickup for that blue box is at 3 p.m., you know, it's still well before 8 when polls close. But if you drop your ballot return envelope in there at 3:30, well, the post office has already picked up for the last time that day. So that ballot won't get picked up until the following day, and then it'll be postmarked late. So you want to be very careful when you're using the blue box that you're making sure you're before the final pickup that day. All right, moving on here to our second pass. So once a batch or mail tray of ballots have had their signature checked, that batch is marked as complete, and the sorter scanner team runs those ballot envelopes through the sorter scanner a second time. All the ballot envelopes that have a signature challenge are removed from the processing stream to wait to have their signature verified. So again, yellow received, yellow tray. If the signatures are a match, then they go into accepted. That's the accepted label you can see on the bottom of that image. And I'll let you all guess what color tray those go in. That's right, a green tray. So all envelopes with accepted signature are placed into a green tray and loaded onto racks that indicate they're ready for opening and extraction. So each tray also has a tag with the batch number and the number of envelopes in the batch. You can see the white tags on the front of those trays there. And batch sizes are 200 envelopes per batch. And I will also mention that the sorter scanner has what's called a milling device, and that actually opens the envelope that have accepted signatures. It kind of slices open or mills open those envelopes. All right. So challenge ballot return envelopes. Just going to take a minute here to touch on what happens when a voter's signature doesn't match or they don't sign their return envelope. So you have time and opportunity to fix your signature. As I mentioned before, we use the term cure to describe fixing signature challenge, regardless of the reason. And we notify voters that have a challenge ballot by sending a letter in the mail We will call if they have a phone number on file in their voter registration record. We will email them if they have an email in their voter registration record or if there's an email on their envelope. And we also partner with the League of Women Voters. They're a nonpartisan nonprofit, and they help us send postcards with a little handwritten message so that, hopefully a handwritten message will catch somebody's eye. As I mentioned before, you can also sign up for text messaging at votewa.gov, or if you use that QR code I showed you before, we can add that for you. Ballots cannot be tabulated if the signature cannot be verified. So those return envelopes just get set aside until that signature cure form is received and we can cure that signature. Voters actually have until the day before the election is certified to complete and return their signature cure form to the elections office. So I won't run all the way back to the calendar slide, but we certify the election on November 28th. So that would mean by November 27th, that Monday, you would be able to cure your signature for nearly 3 weeks after election day. Again, those signature cure forms are looked at by our signature checking staff to make sure that the cure form against the signature on the ballot envelope matches. And really, at the end of the day, less than 1% of ballots returned remain challenged and go uncounted after certification. But it does happen. All right, ballot processing. So once ballot envelopes have been received and the signature verified, the ballot envelopes and their contents go to the ballot processing area where the envelopes are counted, they're opened, and the ballots are removed and inspected. They're also prepared to go onto the ballot scanning and tabulation. And I should probably quickly clarify here that when we say that the envelopes are counted, that's this accountability and tracking that we go through every single step. Anytime a batch of ballots moves from one step to the next, we're verifying if the system says there's 200 ballot return envelopes in that green tray, and now I'm in the ballot processing area, I'm going to count and make sure that there are 200 envelopes in that tray before we move forward. So each batch has this tracking sheet and the number of ballots that are in the batch, who opened the batch. There's areas on the sheet to document any sort of discrepancies. Believe it or not, we get return envelopes back that have no ballot in them. We get envelopes back that have 2 ballots in them. And before any of the contents are removed from the envelopes, those envelopes are counted to confirm the match on that they match the tracking sheet. Once the ballots are removed from the envelopes are removed from the table. Again, that breaks that link between the voter and the ballot that they returned. Then the ballots are inspected for tears or cuts that could cause a jam in the scanning equipment. Those are repaired with just standard clear cellophane tape if there's any tears or cuts. And then once all the ballots are extracted from the envelopes, the ballots are then counted to ensure the number of ballots equals the number of envelopes that was on the batch tracking sheet. Again, to verify there were no empty envelopes or duplicate ballots or double ballots inside of a single envelope. Once all the ballots have been counted, they're placed into this brown cardboard box and they're sent to the scanning area where the ballots themselves are scanned into the ballot tabulation system. Again, each batch has its own tabulation box, and the ballot return envelopes are actually noted with the batch number, and those are stored in a box that goes into retention. And the secrecy sleeves are also placed into a separate storage box labeled with batch numbers and contained therein as well. So you can see those staged boxes on the rack to the left side of the image, and the scanning equipment itself is in the cage. So just like on that LNA test that Matthew was talking to us about, this is the same equipment we scan our ballots on. So here's a little closer look at that. These scanners actually capture both sides of the paper in a full digital picture. And each batch of ballots has a cover page called a target card that tells the system the batch number that is being scanned, and the tracking sheet that follows that batch all the way through the process goes into the scanning area. The scanning equipment counts how many pages are scanned in each batch to verify that number that was hand counted in the processing area matches the number that was scanned. And then I will also note here that the system captures images of the ballots, but it's not counting the votes. The votes are not actually counted or tabulated until 8 p.m. on election night. These components are linked in the server that is held within the cage area, but no equipment in the cage is connected outside of the cage. All right, so now we're going to talk about adjudication. There's our $100 word today. So ballots that could not be read by the scanning equipment or have marks for more than one candidate. They have no mark for any candidates, or some other scenario where the digital scanning equipment cannot interpret the voter's intent. These must be reviewed and, if necessary, modified correctly by humans. And again, we call this process adjudication. It's done in teams of two, and all adjudication work is also reviewed by a second team of two that consists of two different members than the first team. So here's kind of what that looks like. So these monitors, because that adjudication system is caged off, these monitors, and what you can't see is where the camera person is standing behind them is actually the cage. But these monitors duplicate the adjudication team computers, so you can actually watch what the adjudication teams are doing closely, as if you were sitting right in front of the computer without disrupting the adjudication team themselves. There's also a couple of those monitors that are showing images from the security cameras in the basement. So to the right, where the gentleman in the black shirt is standing, that's our processing area where all the ballots are removed from the ballot return envelopes. Behind where the camera person is standing is where the scanning and adjudication systems are. And then you can see in front of us the cameras for the basement work. So really, and then I should also say to the left of this image is where our signature verification teams are. So everything's really nice in one spot. You don't have to stay just in front of those screens. You can walk around and see the processes in person, and then the things that are more difficult to be right there watching, such as the adjudication, are duplicated on that screen for you. Kind of zoom in a little bit there. All right, so we're still on the topic of adjudication. We have state standards of voter intent. So one, we are committed and required to make every effort to ensure that each valid vote is counted. By law, Washington is a voter intent state, which means voters are not disenfranchised if they mark a ballot differently than what is directed on the instructions on the ballot. So when voter intent cannot be discerned, the vote will be counted. The voter intent guide illustrates the standards of, quote, what is a vote and how non-standard marks should be interpreted. So no one guide can really anticipate all possible variations. So in cases where the situation is not addressed in state law, administrative rule, or the voter intent guide, that authority to determine voter intent rests with the county canvassing board. You can find the voter intent manual on the Secretary of State's website. And yeah, now I'm going to go here. This is where we get to have a little bit of fun. Okay, so we have two votes here. I'm going to launch this poll. Who do you think that's a vote for?
And remember, you can move the poll to the left or the right.
All right, we have about 80% of people answering that question, so I'm going to end the poll and share the result. This is what folks think, and I will tell you that that is um, none of the above. That's what we call an overvote. So they've marked a choice, correctly filling in the bubble for two candidates. There's no way to discern which candidate they actually intended to vote for. I will say last time I did this information session, I had one person give me their rationale for the Abigail S. Adams answer, and that was that the bubble is more filled in. Which is great. I love the scrutiny and looking at it closely like that, but unfortunately, yeah, that is an overvote. So I'll stop sharing that. We'll go back. I have a couple of these for you. So, all right, here we go. This is I'm going to launch our next poll. Which candidate is this a vote for? There we go. This one's a little easier. Yes, none of the above. I will end the poll and share that result with folks. So this is, this is what we call an undervote. It is not a vote for any candidate there, and that's okay. This can happen. You can skip a race if you don't have an opinion there, and the rest of your valid votes will be counted. I want to be clear on that. But in this case, for Water District 12 Commissioner, you will not have voted for any candidate. All right, I'll tell you this is the last one, so you're not wondering how many of these is this guy going to do. Just the one here. So, which candidate is this a vote for? All right, we got great participation here. I'll share the result. Excellent. So yes, William Henry Harrison is the person that this is a vote for. But what you can see is that the mark covers the target area next to William Henry Harrison as well as the write-in area. And so our ballot tabulation and scanning system could see that mark as both William Henry Harrison and write-in. So our team actually has to go in and manually tell the tabulation system that this is in fact a valid vote for William Henry Harrison and not an overvote. Sorry, there's our name here. We call that messy mark. And there's the statewide standard on what is a vote next to that for you. All right. And here I'm going to pass it back to Matthew to talk a little bit about our post-election audits.
But first, I'm going to answer the two questions that are sitting in the Q&A. So to answer the first question, if you find two ballots in an envelope, what happens? Do you only count one? What happens with the other one? There are several scenarios that this could happen with. Say a husband and wife both return their ballot in one envelope, but both of them sign that envelope. We will then count both the ballots. If there's only one signature on that envelope, we will refer to the canvassing board for final determination. Most likely, they will not count the superfluous ballot, or they will only count the like voted races. So if it's all vote for president, they all voted for the same candidate, they will just count that one race one time. And then the second question is, what is the change in the process for those ballots with a write-in candidate? During the ballot processing, where we are extracting the ballots, our seasonal employees are taking a cursory view of the ballot, and they are looking for certain things. They are looking for overvotes, like the ones we just went through. They are looking for damaged ballots that may not be scannable, and they are looking for write-in votes. The write-in votes will go into a separate folder in the batch that we can identify those later. The same thing with overvotes. And then we also review any of the writing votes that the system has identified. And if we need to, we will tabulate those for declared candidates. Now I will get into post-election audits. So we conduct 2 post-election audits here in Snohomish County to ensure the accuracy of election results. The first is our official random batch audit, and the second is the risk limiting audit. So the day after election day, we confirm the ballot counting equipment has been counting the votes correctly. Trained election staff will hand count batches and one race randomly selected by representatives from the Democratic and Republican Party the Monday before the election. We will first compare the box seal numbers from the batches chosen to the batches counted to make sure that nothing has happened between when we tabulated the batches and then when we opened it again. We do seal those batches and we'll make sure that that seal number is the same. Staff will then count the results independently and will confirm with the supervisor their independent hand counts. So in the photo, you can see 2 ladies. They are each counting their one candidate pile, and they're making sure that candidate A has this many votes. And then the second lady will be counting that to make sure the candidate A has this many votes. They will not be talking to each other. And when they have both counted it, they will show a supervisor, here's my math, here's my math. If they match, the supervisor will check the tabulation results. And if that's a match, we're good to go. This post-election audit helps us determine that the counts are correct. The second audit we do is our unofficial risk limiting audit.
I'm going to jump in 1 second because
Sure.
I'll be honest, the way that was interpreted by my brain quickly kind of threw me off. Okay. So the batches that are hand counted, they are selected the Monday before the election by representatives from the Democratic and Republican parties. The random batch audit does take place after election day because we don't tabulate before election day. So we wouldn't be able to do the audit before election day. The batches are selected before election day and the counting is done after. But
thank you for clarifying.
My brain short-circuited and heard it that way. And I, eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff with you. And I just wanted to clarify that, if my brain kind of slipped into a different place, I wanted to make sure that I hit that for other folks. So thanks for letting me do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So the second audit we do is the unofficial risk limiting audit. And this is a little confusing. So if Duncan, feel free to jump in after if it's still not clear. Prior to certifying the election result, we conduct a review of a random sample of ballots to establish statistical proof that the tabulation results align with the actual ballots cast. Randomly chosen ballots will have been voted and counted and manually inspected to ensure the accuracy of the machine-generated vote counts for those specific ballots. So we are manually checking the paper ballots to make sure that what was tabulated was what was reflective on the paper. Risk limiting audits, or RLAs, employ statistical principles to evaluate the election's outcome based on parameters to the specific election. We are offering an efficient yet evidence-based approach for validating the reported election results. Essentially, we're conducting a financial audit of the ballots. This post-election audit helps us to determine that the outcomes are correct.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's a real fun one to try and wrap your head around. Definitely come in and check that out because it's a cool process, and I think I like it, at least. I don't want to say everybody likes it, but I think we do. I like that process.
And if you have questions, please come in and we will happily answer any of them. And yes, the RLA happens before certification. Typically, we conduct it the week after the election.
Excellent. All right. So getting into the nitty-gritty on when observing here. Before arriving, consider what you would like to observe. Right? So whether that's envelope scanning, signature checking, opening and ballot inspection, ballot scanning, drop box closing, all that good stuff. Like I kind of walked through that image before. You can do a lot of it here in our office. But a lot of the processes, they are sequential too. So, our workloads vary from day to day, depending on how many envelopes we're getting in. We try to do our best to have projections of what that looks like. So think about what you'd like to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about start dates again. But always feel free to communicate with us. We want to make sure that you can see the process that you would like to observe. And then I'll also just say, if you see something, say something. So when you're here and you see something happening that appears to not follow the rules and regulations, say something to one of our designated staff members, and that way we can investigate.
And we will post the daily activities on our website banner. So we will post around 4 o'clock the day before what we anticipate to do the following day and the times we're anticipating to be working on that. So we will say, if we're starting at 9 a.m., we are not going to be starting before 9 a.m. We will start at 9 a.m. And then we have a time where we think will be completed by. So please check our website or give us a call so you don't make a trip and we're done working for the day.
All right. So here, thank you for that, Matthew. That's great. And gave us folks some time to look at this slide here. So, yeah, if you need to get more information, again, the observer rules, they'll be here at the counter when you check in. Please check out our website. We have a lot of great information up there. That's snoco.org/elections, the easy way to get there. Votewa.gov, again, that's your voter portal. You can verify all of your voter registration information, your ballot status, get a copy of your voter's guide, and print a replacement ballot if you need to. And then always the Secretary of State office has a bunch of great information as well. On those opportunities, we have a PDF on the website with all of this information. But so today, 10 a.m., we did the accessible voting unit logic and accuracy test. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., we will do the logic and accuracy test of our scanning and tabulation equipment. On October 24th at 9 a.m., we will begin signature verification. November 1st, we will begin ballot opening and inspection. And November 3rd, we will begin ballot scanning and ballot adjudication at 9 a.m. that morning. But there's more. November 6th is when we do that random batch selection for the random batch audit. November 7th at 8 p.m., we will do our initial tabulation. That's those initial results. Again, we like to say to encourage folks to register, or not register, sorry, to return their ballot early so your votes can be counted in election night results. You know, folks, they like to sit by their computers maybe and refresh the results and see how things looked that first night. So the more people we get voting and returning their ballots early, the more accurate those election night results are. But we do continue to tabulate until we certify on the 28th. All right, so November 8th is going to be that random batch audit at 10 a.m. Our first canvassing board meeting, as needed, will be at 11 a.m. on November 22nd. On November 27th, that's the day before certification, we will have another canvassing board meeting. And then November 28th, the canvassing board meets to certify the election results at 1 p.m.
And the risk limiting audit is November 14th.